You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Well, there's no getting around it. There is basically one story right now, and it's the impeachment of Donald J. Trump. My guest is involved with that and knowledgeable about that, the wonderful Liz Holtzman, former Congresswoman from New York, who served on the Watergate Committee and who has been a guest on this program before speaking about impeachment in her knowledgeable fashion. And that particular broadcast was so popular that people asked for it to be replayed. And I decided, well, instead of that, let's see if we can just get Liz back. And she said yes. So she is here with us today to comment on how the trial is going, with all of the smarts, and they're considerable, that she brings to the subject and every subject. And then, of course, there's Fighting Words, and there's Surrealism Corner, and there's where we have to go first, above, around, beneath, through, and inside the headlines. Both this segment, Inside the Headlines, and the next, Surrealism Corner, will perforce be slightly shorter than usual this week to make room for the expanded impeachment conversation and trial coverage and analysis in Fighting Words. But there are two items I cannot pass by. In case you ever doubted Trump's shift from a supposed pro-choice position to a rabid anti-choice position on women's reproductive rights, his regime is now threatening to withhold federal funds from California if the state doesn't drop its requirement that private insurers cover abortions. Roger Servino, director of, wait for it, the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services, stated, quote, "People should not be forced to participate or pay for or cover other people's abortions," close quote. The announcement was meant as a warning shot to other states that require insurance to cover abortions, including New York, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, and Maine. This was announced on the morning of the so-called March for Life, the high-profile annual Friends of the Fetus demonstration. Trump became the first sitting president to speak in person at the march, lying, of course, that emergency abortions performed in late term were executions of babies after birth. The Washington Post suspended one of its reporters, Felicia Sonmez, when she posted tweets about Kobe Bryant after his death in a helicopter accident last week, tragically with his young daughter. She posted a link on Twitter to a 2016 Daily Beast article that detailed an allegation of sexual assault made against Bryant in 2003. She then received an email from the Post's executive editor, Martin Barron, saying that she'd shown, quote, "a real lack of judgment to tweet this," close quote, amid all the tributes to Bryant after his death. And he told her that she would be placed on leave. She deleted the tweet, but the paper's managing editor, Tracy Grant, emailed her, quote, "You might want to consider a hotel or a friend's place for this evening," close quote. Bryant had been arrested in 2003 after a complaint by a hotel employee in Colorado. Another charge, this time of felony sexual assault, was dropped in 2005 when he settled with his accuser out of court. Ms. Sonmez, the reporter, is being deluged on Twitter. 10,000 people, literally, no exaggeration, have sent her abuse and death threats. Nevertheless, over 200 Washington Post journalists, including the paper's most prominent reporters, also the Post's own media criticism column, and the News Guild, the union that represents Post journalists, criticized the paper's decision to suspend her, noting that she herself is a survivor of sexual assault. Sonmez was one of 2 women who accused Jonathan Kaiman, a Beijing bureau chief of the Los Angeles Times, of sexual misconduct. After the LA Times mounted an investigation into him, Kaiman quietly resigned in 2018. In their statement, Post journalists and the News Guild emphasized their support of Sonmez and their criticism of her being suspended, noting that the Post showed, quote, an utter disregard for best practices in supporting survivors of sexual violence. We have repeatedly seen colleagues, including members of management, share contentious opinions on social media platforms without sanction. But here, a valued colleague is being censored for making a statement of fact. Period. Close quote. And I'd add that this kind of censure of a reporter who also happens to be a sexual assault survivor, but is as a reporter simply doing her job, this kind of censure is precisely why we need and have the Women's Media Center. We have to take our first break here, but there's lots to come in our journeying toward fighting words at the end of the program. There's my conversation with Liz Holtzman, our special guest, in which she will, I think, forensically dissect what's happened so far in the impeachment trial and what's to come. And we will try to suss out what's to come in a more general sense as well. If anybody can, it would be her. And first, we have to cross the completely borderless place called the Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Surprising, effective, creative tactics are always welcome, and women have been inventing more and more of them lately, some witty, some moving. If they ever need a safe house, don't you think we should hide them in the Surrealism Corner? These 3 examples, for instance. Women in India are fed up with being harassed and assaulted in public spaces. They're intent on reclaiming such spaces. Some of them began by napping in public parks, soon joined by others. #MeetToSleep is now a movement. Women in several cities of India come out in public parks and simply nap, alone. This is a brave, significant act in the context of the dominant Indian culture, where women are not encouraged to be seen alone in public spaces. Napping in public, activists report, at first feels pretty awkward, but soon becomes an empowering act of assertion. The first such event took place in 2014 on the anniversary of and in response to a widely covered 2012 Delhi gang rape and murder case. But now, meet-to-sleep gatherings, thousands of women come out. Never has napping been such a radical act. Last week on this program, we discussed the disappearances of Indigenous women in Canada, women who have been abducted, sexually enslaved, murdered, or simply vanished. Indigenous women in Canada are 12 times more likely to go missing or be murdered than non-Native women, and in the United States they face violence rates 10 times higher than the national average. Despite government promises of action, little has been done to provide answers to families of the missing. So women from the Splatsin Nation near Vernon, British Columbia, very frustrated by police inaction, have taken matters into their own hands. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Drone Search Team has been conducting its own searches for 5 women who went missing in the past 2 years in their area. The group was founded by Jody Leon, a grandmother concerned for the safety of her daughters and her grandchildren. A local photographer donated his drones and his expertise to search parties, which are comprised of members of the community. The team hasn't found the missing women yet, but they did find a few articles of clothing and bones and turned the information over to the police. Meanwhile, the group has created a community and support network for the families, all of whom participate in the searches and share their experiences and their grief. In Mexico City, women have been demonstrating, picketing, marching, and signing petitions for at least a decade or more, trying to stem the disappearance of women there, and trying to stop the violence against women, which is so prevalent from the streets to the universities to the homes, often culminating in death. Femicide, the women call it. Now they're trying ridicule, since serious protest seems to have got them nowhere. Now they show up every time city officials appear in public, bankers, police chiefs, politicians, other powerful or famous men, and simply splatter them with pink glitter. Now this might sound frivolous, given the subject, but think, do you know how hard it is to get glitter off? Out of your hair, out of the creases in your skin, your eyelashes, your clothing. This tactic is a witty, edgy one, and some powerful men are now so scared of being glittered they barely go out in public. The municipal administration has renewed its vows to do something about the violence. Well, we'll see. If they don't, I'll bet anything that the feminists there will come up with something else that will be effective and surreal. Time for another quick pause before we move on into the conversation. Again, this week with former Congresswoman Liz Holtzman. I couldn't help but think, when the senators were preparing their questions for the 2 teams, how I wished all over again that Liz was a sitting senator. She did run, and she lost for want of being able to raise enough money, a problem that women commonly have. But the kind of questions she would have asked, they would have been killer questions. And I'm going to ask her what she thinks the senators missed, what she thinks they should have asked, and where she thinks we're going from here. Stick with us. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Moving now into the conversation. As I mentioned, my guest this week is returning to the program and is Elizabeth Holtzman. I want to take a minute and tell you just who Elizabeth Holtzman is in greater detail than simply saying she was a former member of Congress and active in the Watergate Committee of impeachment of Richard Nixon. For the listeners in China and Brazil and England and all over the world, this is who is the guest today. She was a graduate of Radcliffe College, magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa in 1962, and of Harvard Law School. She was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, that's SNCC, which was the most radical in the pacifist civil rights groups of the day, doing voter registration in the South and so forth. She assisted in creating a law student civil rights research council and was generally an activist in civil rights. She was a founder of the Brooklyn Women's Political Caucus when she started in private practice, but in the 1972 primary election, she upset Judiciary Committee Chairman Emanuel Seller, who was 50 years old, the incumbent, and at that time, the House's longest-serving member ever. She was 31 years old. Who does that remind you of? She was the youngest woman elected to Congress ever at that time. She became involved in ending the bombings during the Cambodian campaign of the Vietnam War. It's a long, convoluted set of tasks she went through, from filing a legal challenge in the U.S. federal court, straight up to appealing to Justice Thurgood Marshall and Justice William O. Douglas to halt the bombing. It was an incredibly courageous thing to do at the time. In 1974, this is 2 years after she gets to Congress, Holtzman was one of the Judiciary Committee members who recommended 3 articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon during the Watergate scandal. In 1978, Holtzman secured an extension of the deadline for state legislatures to ratify the proposed Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution, which, of course, Virginia just did. Also in 1978, she helped pass legislation to expel Nazi war criminals who had immigrated to the U.S. and did many different important pieces of legislation on immigration and naturalization for people who really needed it and were not Nazis. In 1980, she ran for the Senate, and in the primary, she defeated former Miss America, Bess Meyerson, and former New York City Mayor, very popular John V. Lindsay. But in the general election, she faced Republican Alphonse D'Amato, and a theme of his campaign was that she had never voted for a Department of Defense appropriation bill. Well, some of us would count that in her favor, but many didn't, and he won, just squeaked by a margin of 1%. She then taught at New York University Law School and Graduate School, and in 1981 she was elected district attorney in Kings County, that's Brooklyn, and re-elected in 85, and stayed in the post for 7 years until she became New York City Comptroller in 89. She was the first woman ever to be elected district attorney and comptroller in New York City. In 1992, after the Clarence Thomas Anita Hill eruption, she sought the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate to challenge D'Amato again, but this time also running was Geraldine Ferraro, and women split their campaign donations in particular between the two women, so the lack of money undid her. It undid Ferraro as well. It undid every Democrat, and D'Amato cruised through again. After elective office, she went back to private practice, but didn't stop. Incredible activism against Nazi war crimes and wiretapping of American citizens, and a new book, Who Said It Would Be Easy? One Woman's Life in the Political Arena. She served as a member of the Homeland Security Advisory Council, but resigned in 2018 over the decision to separate migrant children from their families. She has a new book out just from last year, The Case for Impeaching Trump, and she is a friend and an idol of mine because it's been such a consistently principled life. I should note here that this conversation was taped before any decision had been made in the Senate as to whether or not to admit witnesses and documents in the trial, and it was taped while the question and answer period between the senators and the two teams, Defense and House, were still ongoing. This was necessitated for the short period we have in post-production to get the program ready for your ears. We get as close to the moment as we can. Here, to my great pleasure, is Liz Holtzman. Liz, welcome back to the program. I'm so grateful to you for doing this again, but we really need your wisdom here. I don't know. I know you've been in Europe. Have you been able to keep up with most of what's been happening second by second?
I wouldn't say second by second, but yes, I've been able to keep up with what's been happening.
I thought so.
And thank you for having me back, Robin.
Oh, please. Okay, so we can't pretend that we'll be outdated in the next, I don't know, by the time we hang up, but certainly by the time this airs. They've started the question period, and it made me regret all over again, painfully, that you're not in the Senate to ask some of those questions. If you were, what kind of questions would you ask the two teams?
Well, I'd focus on whether Donald Trump, in fact, told John Bolton what Bolton says he said. I'd ask why the president is classifying the Bolton book as national security. This reminds me of Nixon and the Nixon tapes. President Nixon said the tapes were national security, but when they got to the Supreme Court, of course, they were not national security. It was just an effort to cover up his criminal behavior.
Right. And what other kinds of questions? It's a little confusing to me how the House team asks questions when we don't have access to the evidence that they blame us for not having and won't give us.
Well, I think that the whole process is distorted and was designed by Mitch McConnell from the get-go to basically squelch any serious impeachment effort in the Senate and give an acquittal to Donald Trump. They were going to put everything in this nice package with beautiful wrapping and a very nice ribbon and say, see, Mr. President, you're guilty of nothing. That's what the Republicans and Mitch McConnell wanted to do. I think what's happened now is that there's a big crack in that plan, and there's a possibility that the Republicans will allow additional witnesses, in which case, who knows what's going to happen because we don't know what kind of evidence is coming out, and they're desperate to make sure that no additional facts, negative facts, come out about the president. That is their position. Otherwise, all bets are off in the sense that you don't know what Bolton would say about many things, not just Ukraine.
Exactly.
But what kind of favors has the president done for dictators? What about his completely bizarre relationship with Putin, where he's Putin's poodle?
Yeah.
What light could Bolton shed on that? I mean, there's a lot of harm that Bolton could do to President Trump. They don't want him, and they don't want his papers, his documents. They don't want any other witnesses. They don't want any facts that are going to keep that package from exploding. And they also, just as in case, have Alan Dershowitz up there saying that in any case, even if everything Bolton said were true, it's not an impeachable offense. Yeah. I mean, this is revisionist history of the highest Stalinist order. There's no, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, he himself said something else years ago when he wasn't in Trump's lawyer. Number two, just about every other single scholar on this subject says he's wrong.
Right.
And number three, and to me the most important thing is the gold standard precedent for impeachment efforts was that of the House, was set by the House Judiciary Committee in the Nixon impeachment. And guess what? There was an abuse of power article. Guess what? The Judiciary Committee never charged Nixon with a single crime. Guess what? That precedent is still binding. And guess what? Alan Dershowitz doesn't even mention it. So we know this is revisionist history on his part. It's disgraceful, the case that the president has made in the Senate. His lawyers have put on, either have engaged in dishonest, disingenuous, and deceptive arguments, if not outright lies.
Yeah, I sure wish you were in the Senate, even though they're not allowed to speak. Tell me, Liz, there surely is another factor going on in what passes for Mitch McConnell's mind, which is that the polls are now showing tending towards 75% of the American people want witnesses. That's 75% of the American people, as I've said to friends, don't agree on anything usually. So this is an unusually high pressure. And if he wants anything else more than defending Trump, it seems to me he wants to keep control of the Senate and not lose that to the Democrats. Do you think I'm far off base, or what do you think that will have an effect on him?
Well, of course it's outrageous to cover up for the president, and there's no question that refusal to call witnesses would be a cover-up.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from Mitch McConnell's point of view, he's between a rock and a hard place.
He sure is.
Because if he shuts down the process now, says no witnesses, no documents, he hopes somehow this will blow over till next November. That's one scenario. But the alternative for him is that he lets witnesses in, lets documents in, much more dirt comes out right now with regard to Trump.
Exactly.
Could that torpedo Trump, and doesn't the fate of the Republican Party hang on that as well? So there's really no, what would you say, totally safe, guaranteed re-election course of action here. Everything is fraught. Shutting down the trial so that no witnesses are heard, so that it's a fake trial, an ersatz trial. That also is dangerous. It's dangerous because the senators could be held responsible for covering up. It's dangerous because they'll look like fools when more information comes out. So that's one course of action. The other course of action is open this proceeding up to witnesses and documents, and Trump can be injured. And if Trump is injured, what does that do to the Republican Senate also in the November elections? So there's no safe course of action here.
What about the old rubric of rats deserting the sinking ship? Because it seems to me there's a motor in history that once people start coming forth, then more people start coming forth. When Kelly came, General Kelly suddenly came forth and said, "I believe Bolton," that was yet another crack. And that I believe, as you just said, that will keep coming. So doesn't that have a huge effect of terror on not just McConnell, but on all the Republicans in the Senate?
Of course, it should. That's why there's no good course of action for them, and there's no guaranteed way out of this. But they may decide the safest for the moment course of action is to shut everything down, give an acquittal in this beautiful, bright, gift wrap package to Donald Trump, and hope nothing else comes out, and hope the American people forget about the cover-up. That's probably what they think is going to be the safest, but they know that that's not a safe course of action, because probably if they shut this down, somehow Bolton's views and notes and so forth could become public in another kind of forum. And the House could do further investigations. We could hear from John Kelly as well as others, and other information will come out. Remember, the Southern District of New York is conducting, which is the U.S. Attorney's Office, is conducting investigations of this guy, Lev Parnas, and his partner, who've already been indicted, and Giuliani. And so who knows what information will come out from that source. And others may come forward. So I just think that this is, I think that this whole process will harm Trump now and in the future. And I'm just hoping, however, that the process is one that the Republicans realize has to be done in a manner that's consistent with honorable and honest government. And that, I just have no way of knowing whether that's going to happen. None. But they need to say, more important than party at this moment, more important than anything else, is adhering to what the Constitution provides and following the rule of law, because that's what's kept us going for over 200 years, and doing that is the only way that we have security as a democracy going forward.
Yeah, Liz, let me ask you a question relevant to just what you just said. It's an unfair question that no one really can answer, but I'd love to know what even your thoughts are on it. Given what they know, the Senate, and given the fact that some of them are pretty smart people, others of them not so much, it seems to me, but some of them we can't just dismiss as complete dunderheads. Given what they know, which is also what you just said, and that they will pay a price for this, they also see that it's trending towards 75% of the American people who want witnesses and documents. Why do they stonewall this much? Is it just as simple as keeping power as long as you can?
Yes, they're terrified.
Yeah.
Terrified of two things. Number one, of being attacked by Trump. Remember that so far there's only one senator who said he wants witnesses, and that's Mitch Romney,
right,
because he's got independent stature. Not one single other Republican has said that yet.
Right.
So they're very worried about their political standing, terrified if they're up for re-election that Trump will somehow come after them. The second thing that they're terrified about is that they know this president.
Yeah.
And they know what he's capable of. They know the corruption. They know the dishonesty. They know the stupidity. They know the cruelty. They know all of that stuff.
They know he will throw them under the bus, too. Of
course. They are... Right, sorry.
No, as Adam Schiff mentioned in his closing arguments. I mean, he will do away with them as in a heartbeat. So they know all these...
Right, but they are worried, however, that if that information comes out and Trump gets diminished in stature, they could also lose, because maybe the country's going to throw all the Republicans out, as happened with Nixon.
That's right.
In the Nixon case, when Nixon went down and resigned, the midterm elections that vote took place in the Judiciary Committee voted to impeach Nixon in late July. Early August, the smoking gun tape came out showing Nixon's orchestrating the Watergate break-in cover-up, and Nixon resigned early August. That November were the midterm elections, and the American people threw the Republican Party out. I mean, it was a landslide.
I remember.
Because they stood up and supported Nixon, and they paid a huge price for that. And don't think the American people won't do that again. So they are terrified. They're terrified that Watergate could happen to them, and they're terrified, on the other hand, that if they do anything bad that will reflect badly on Trump will go after them. So there's a no-win situation for them.
There's a no.
But the easiest course of action right now is to cover up. That's the default. And they're going to it.
What I have trouble wrapping my mind around, and I don't think of myself as being politically naive, but when you have no good choices, when you look at history and you know that the likelihood is that November is going to be a debacle, when you know all the things that you just said, and in addition, there's no real way out. You're going to be messed up one way or the other. Why would you want to add the third aspect of being totally traduced and messed up, which is that you will go down in history as a schmuck, when in fact you could go down as a profile in courage. Am I crazy to even consider that they should be considering that?
Yeah, I don't know if you're crazy to think that, but the fact of the matter is not that many people are profiles in courage, and I think they're trying to figure out what's best for them. There were in the House Judiciary Committee during the Nixon impeachment 7 Republicans who were profiles in courage. There were also 3 Southern Democrats who were also profiles in courage because their districts were just as Republican, if not more so, or pro-Nixon as the Republican district. So there were people who felt that way. But many people are looking for the best way out, the path of least resistance. And I think they are going to go along with Trump, and they will go along with shutting this process down. The question is how many will say no. Of course, they should look at the polling and get a sense that the American people want witnesses. Americans are very hostile to secrecy. They don't like that idea. And that's why Trump is going to pay a price here if he tries to shut Bolton down. Voting for witnesses is very dangerous because then it puts Trump in the Nixon hot seat, because the American people will see he's shutting down the truth.
Right.
If he's doing that, there's suggestions that he may be guilty. So people will not like that. They do not want to go down that road. So they are going to. I think that what we don't really understand, and it's kind of shocking to me also, is the kind of pressure he can exert on the Republicans in the Senate and the Republicans in the House.
Yeah.
Because the Republican Party has now become a pro-Trump, a wholly Trump party, and that's not good for the Republican Party, and it's not good for the country.
I keep thinking they'll get death threats on Twitter. Okay, they're United States senators. They were in the House, of course, United States representatives. So what? They know that the overall public is with them. There's a small minority, but more than vociferous one, that is threatening them with hellfire. What has turned grown women and men, even if they are right wing, into such total scaredy cats? When you also on the other side have in recent memory what happened with Nixon, for that matter, in recent memory what happened with Clinton, which now everyone from Dershowitz to Ken Starr have reversed themselves conveniently on, and they still hold to it. It astonishes me. Profiles in shame, I keep calling it. I just don't understand it. It is a high office. It is an honorable office, but it's not the end of the world if you lose it or you're.
Yes, but people don't like to lose, and they don't want to give things up. And there's a very important book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn called The First Circle, and he talks about the situation of people who were put in the Gulag under the Soviet regime. And these were scientists, and they were, in terms of the hierarchy in the Gulag, they were relatively well off.
Uh-huh.
And they were asked to inform on each other. The book is about that. And if they informed on somebody else, they would get more food, they would get better clothing, they would get a little heat in their apartments. And almost everybody wanted that. Mm-hmm. The only person who was free was the hero of the book, protagonist of the book, because he was willing to give everything up to do what was right. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I'm not saying everybody is willing to buckle,
right,
but I think that we just don't understand and are not accustomed to seeing in such a brazen way
exactly
the weakness, the cowardice, the timidity, and the dishonesty, the corruption. It's a kind of a moral corruption of what's happening in the Senate. And it's very sad to see, because it means that Trump is not, it's not just Trump in the presidency, it's Trump in many places in the Senate. And so the good news is that you don't need every senator to support or every Republican to support witnesses. You just need 4.
Right.
Just as in the House Judiciary Committee against Nixon, we didn't need every Republican. We had 7.
Right.
So, I think it can go forward. I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's possible because of the huge numbers that more than 4 Republicans will join in the quest for witnesses, but they're going to be spending every single ounce of political energy they can to push those senators to shut the process down, to cover up.
Lev Parnas is now sitting in the Senate Visitors Gallery today, and that in itself should send some kind of interesting message. I must say I'm surprised because it seems to me that the Democrats have played this very, very well, it seems to me. Do you agree? I mean, I thought that Adam Schiff's remarks were extraordinary. I thought that many not all, but many on the House team, Val Deming impressed me enormously, and Hakeem Jeffries, but Schiff was a marvel. I thought that so far they have, I don't know whether it's under because of Pelosi's brilliant direction or what, but that they've operated tactically well. What do you think?
Oh, I think the House presented an excellent case. I think they did a very good job. They were well prepared. The statements were fine. They were delivered in some cases in extremely eloquent fashion. It was professionally done.
Yeah.
So I was very impressed with that. It was very impressive. The Republican managers were not so impressive, and plus,
no.
The point is, you had people there who have serious questions about their own characters. I mean, you have the former Attorney General of Florida who was accused of taking $25,000 from Trump
Pam
in order to
Bondi.
shut in order to shut an investigation down. You have Kenneth Starr himself, who was removed as president from Baylor University, chancellor or president, from Baylor University because he failed to protect women there from sexual assault. And you have Alan Dershowitz, who's the subject of a lawsuit accusing him of sexual assault, not to mention that he was palling around with Mr. Epstein, who was, as we know, a sexual predator and was in that house and took massages. Of course, he says he kept his underpants on. But, but I mean, it's a sleazy team.
Yeah. Oh, Liz, thank you. Thank you so much. Your perspective is always really bracing and helpful. It seems to be a tiny window of a way out through this.
I do think so. And that's where the polling makes a difference. The American people, in the end, came through on Nixon, and the American people are coming through on an open, fair process. And let's not be totally cynical and think it's going to make no difference. It will.
I think if there's an open, fair process, there is a further window, which is that they will not be able to do anything else but convict him. Naive as that may sound, those are the miracles that sometimes happen in politics in this country. Now, whether he'll actually go or a sergeant at arms will have to carry him out feet first is another question. But I think there is actually hope, and I'm so grateful that somebody who has the smarts and the experience that you have feels that too. It makes a huge difference, because otherwise I think I must be crazy.
You're not crazy. There is room for hope, whether he's ultimately removed by the trial process or whether this process in the end so damages him that he's either removed some other way or in November. This is not good for Donald Trump. Of course, it's not good for the country.
Thank you again. Bless your heart. Bless your brain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Liz.
Bye-bye.
And now it's time for our last break before I come rushing back with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
No witnesses, no documents, no surprise. Fighting words. The first impeachment trial in the history of the United States to forbid the presence of factual evidence and witnesses is now drawing to a close. The things some of us do in the service of fairness. Because I had watched virtually every moment of last week's prosecutorial presentation, I also watched virtually every minute of the Trump team defense presentation. I did cling for dear life to the glad news that Elizabeth McDonough, Senate parliamentarian, is the first woman to ever hold the post, until I remembered that Mitch McConnell was changing all the rules anyway, so somebody probably thought it's a powerless job now, might as well throw it to a woman. For the rest, I discovered a new capacity in myself for enduring hours of lies, bluster, personal nastiness, coded words of racism and sexism, oxymoronic self-contradictions within the same sentence, and swoops of hypocritical rhetoric as ungainly as a flightless dodo bird, and this was before news broke that the head of the Trump defense team had actually been in the room when Trump tried to get John Bolton to join the so-called drug deal plan to force Ukraine into smearing Biden. That's grounds for disbarment, or worse, in a normal world, where you're not considered legally qualified to represent a conspiracy in which you participated. The Trump defense was a triumph of the shill, not of the will. Don't forget that the first, second, and third tiers of reputable law firms in the country had already refused to represent Trump. This team, doubtless instructed by their client, kept trying to sell us something. But the product was faulty. The sales presentation set new low standards for mediocrity, and 75% of the American public wanted witnesses and documents, so we weren't buying. Because they kept changing terms, rules, and grounds, and reinterpreting an occurrence or motivation 3 different ways in succession, they came across lacking even the dignity of malevolence, but instead as flailingly stupid. Their client gets away with being flailingly stupid because his followers regard that as authentic, that is, genuinely stupid. Cognitive dissonance ruled the defense. Ken Starr complained that, like war, impeachment was hell because it was so divisive. Mischievous news programs aired this clip cheek by jowl with clips of Starr in Javert-like pursuit of his prey during the Bill Clinton impeachment, when he was raining down hellfire, fueling as much national divisiveness as he could. The other celebrity lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, also reversed himself from his own position during the Clinton trial, since he now realizes that abuse of power doesn't really exist as a concept or charge. Isn't that good to know? I couldn't help visualizing him at that Senate podium, garbed not in a suit, but as he had described himself in a recent Vanity Fair interview, dressed as he'd been when receiving only massages from 13-year-old sexually enslaved little girls at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. "I never took off my underpants," he was quoted as saying. Then there was Pam Bondi, Trump team token, the former Florida DA who left office under a cloud for having accepted $25,000 for dropping a case against the fraud perpetrated by Trump University. Her presentation was a debasement embarrassing to watch. The defense lawyers ignored the headlines about John Bolton's new revelations. There was only one brief aside mention toward the end. As for the House manager team, they responded to questions in a focused and, gasp, factual manner, clearly getting almost as weary of having to repeat themselves as I was of hearing that. Meanwhile, back at what used to be the presidency, Trump was receiving his buddy Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, currently under indictment for corruption, who had recently failed to get the Knesset to declare him immune from prosecution. Birds of a feather. You know the rest. When it came to a vote on admitting witnesses and documents, only 2 Republicans, Senator Susan Collins of Maine and Mitt Romney of Utah, even voted to admit facts into the trial. McConnell set aside Monday and Tuesday for senators to explain their votes publicly if they wish, thus get their cover stories across to their constituents back home, squirming out loud why they have become profiles in shame. Then the vote on Wednesday, from which McConnell expects Trump to emerge acquitted of all guilt, although still standing impeached for history, and ready for a triumphant second term. But wait, a lot can happen over 5 days, especially in this ceaseless eruptive state the live volcano called news is spewing. The truth already rumbles, patient tectonic plates grinding in inevitability, gathering momentum. Like the Iowa caucuses on Monday. Like Trump having to deliver the State of the Union address on Tuesday to both houses of Congress in the House of Representatives while still formally standing trial for high crimes and misdemeanors. That's a first. Like further revelations from Bolton, now pissed off that he wasn't called to testify, like more General Kelly validations, like more Lev Parnas interviews, like more small part players we haven't even heard from yet. The current of truth pulses at its own rate, coursing through whatever vehicles or arteries, employing any messengers, using any motives it can locate. There will be additional principled whistleblowers. There will be officials and staffers, high and low, eager for book contracts or greedy for money, fame, or revenge. There will be miscreants indicted or about to be, desperate to tell all in exchange for a milder sentence. And all the while, Senate Republicans must face their constituents, the nation, and history for having voted as they did while aware that this hemorrhage of truth was coming and unstoppable. Their vote will be in their obituaries, and they know it. The rest of us need to refuse despair. Despair is really so easy, so cheap. We need to wait, actively though, not passively, remembering that the dynamism of democracy is what has saved us so far and will again. We already know what facts we know, despite subpoenas being ignored, contested, or defied. The world has those facts and evidence for 3 reasons. Because the press did its job. Because the courts ruled that this knowledge was our right. And because ordinary individuals and groups like American Oversight thought, hey, at least why not try? And got hold of them under the Freedom of Information Act. We're doing all this again, continuing it right now. Hey, why not? Besides, vengeance is a dish best served on the ballot. And since the foes of democracy will attack the election every which way, we need to defend its integrity and make sure that the number of Americans turning out to vote is so massive that the tide will engulf all efforts to sabotage it. And by the way, sabotage and attack are the words we should use, not that ridiculous, light-hearted euphemism, meddled. In the meantime, if you find yourself getting depressed, consider if you'd rather be a Republican senator at this moment in American history. It's an instant cheer-up, forcing your immediate, realistic acknowledgement that your future, our future, is a hell of a lot brighter than theirs. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter And remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at @TheRobinMorgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.